Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Anna Dievendorf. I'm the marketing manager at Bambooster. Today we have a bunch of Google My Business local SEO experts joining us. So many marketers are responsible for all of the online presence that is going to get people in the door of the business that they're responsible for. A lot of this includes Google My Business and that local search presence. And a lot of the Google My Business content creation skills that social media managers have are relevant to creating those posts, those updates on their GMB. And we're going to talk about some strategy for that today to get your GMB presence as buttoned up and likely to rank as possible. So I'm going to go over a couple housekeeping things. Usually we get a lot of questions about, is this recorded or where can I find this? So a recording of this webinar will be on the Traject YouTube channel. There will also be a replay blog written up that will include that video that you can find on the blog, the Bambooster blog. But if you sign up for this using an email, you don't need to worry about any of that because you'll get an email with all of those materials included as we're able to roll those out in the following days. So we're going to talk about, some topics that have to do with GMB posts. We're also going to talk about a lot of questions that you guys have submitted ahead of time. If you have other questions about anything that comes up in the conversation or you didn't get a chance to submit a question ahead of time when you registered, throw those questions in the Q&A at any point during the entire webinar, and then at the end we will start going through those and we'll ask the panelists the questions. So we have three wonderful experts with us today. I will let them go around and introduce themselves and what kind of things they do in the marketing world and where they're joining us from. And I'll kick it off to Allie first.
Yeah, thanks so much. So my name is Allie Margeson. I'm the Director of GMB Services at Whitespark. We're a Canadian company based in Edmonton. I'm actually in Toronto. And so I work with a whole team of people who optimize Google My Business listings for businesses.
Awesome. All right, Claire.
Hello. So I'm Claire Carlile. I am in Wales in the UK, and so I guess I'm what am I? I'm a chartered marketer, and I run my own business, and I work with small and medium-sized businesses, mostly on SEO, local SEO, content, that type of thing.
Wonderful. And we've also got Krystal joining us on audio. So Krystal, you want to tell us about you?
Yes. Hi, everyone. This is Krystal Chang. Apologies, I could not get my camera on Mac working with GoToWebinar, so you'll just have to listen to my annoying voice for this duration. I am based out of San Diego, California. I currently am Solutions Engineer for Strategic Partnerships at Uberall, which is a company based out of Berlin. And really, we are a local SaaS solution working with small, medium, large size businesses and agencies, really on all things local listings, SEO, and of course, Google Posts.
Wonderful. Okay, so a lot of this conversation, we're going to dive into a little bit more sophisticated strategy of the best content, the most engaging content, all of that. But before we even get to where that's relevant, people need to be able to see your GMB, and it needs to be kind of buttoned up, and you need to have your fundamentals in order so that it will come up when people search for your business. So our panelists have prepared how you can get those fundamentals straightened away. And if you'll all give me 1 second, I'm going to share my screen so that they can share these fundamentals with us. And first up, we have Allie's.
Yeah, all right, thanks so much. So there's a couple things that I think are particularly important for GMB when it comes to the basics. The first thing is to choose the most accurate business category for your business, and you set that as your primary category in the Google My Business dashboard. And that's really important to keep it accurate. For example, if you're a law firm, there's lots of different options. You can have lawyer, law firm, criminal defense attorney, divorce attorney, like they're kind of endless. And so it's really important to choose the most specific of those ones. We find that businesses that go specific, that's, you know, even if the category could be related to a keyword that you're targeting, that's going to be the best thing. If you set yourself as a divorce attorney versus law firm, you're going to rank better in Google Maps. So check that for sure. Also, keep checking on this from time to time, because Google is adding new categories, and they remove some pretty much every month. We're seeing some movement in all of that. So primary category is a huge thing that definitely will help your business rank to get that set properly. Another thing that I think is super important is to implement a review strategy and build it into your company culture. We talk a lot about reviews and review strategies, responding to reviews as marketers, but it really has to be adopted by your business. Like, everybody has to be on board with this, you know. So I think it's one of those like ranking factors that will help your Google My Business listing rank better, and obviously that will give your Google posts more visibility if you're ranking for more terms and you know, ranking higher. So yeah, we just published a study, and one of the top GMB conversion factors, this is the Local Search Ranking Factors 2020, one of the top ranking factors was Google reviews. So make a plan. Ask every customer for a review, whether it's in person, by email, by text, through a platform, whatever it is that you're doing, make sure that you're asking every customer for a review and get your team to buy in, so that'll be successful. And then the last thing, and I'm sure Claire would share a ton about this, she has a great resource about how to track everything in Google My Business, but Google My Business insights are unreliable. So if you're a social media marketer and you're used to, you know, getting reliable data from other sources, I just got to break the news to you, GMB insights are not super reliable. So track everything. Consider using a call tracking system to get an accurate picture of how many calls are coming through. But when it comes to adding links, whether that's a link to your website or links from your post, for sure, make sure that you're using tags on those so that you can accurately track how many clicks they're getting. If you're reporting either to business owner, stakeholders, and you're just using the information room insights, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're probably under-reporting the good work that you're doing.
Awesome. I just want to emphasize that I love that you mentioned a review management strategy, and it's a little bit of a Pandora's box. We could talk about that till we're blue in the face. But if you're not sure what it looks like to ask people for reviews or to respond to reviews, whether they're good or bad, you should respond to all of them. A really great resource for anyone in this call is a couple of the Great Us blogs. So that's our sister platform for reputation management. There's a really great blog on scripts for asking for them, and then scripts for responding to good and bad ones.
Yeah, definitely.
Move on to this next slide from Claire. Whoops, and I went one forward, so we'll go one back and kick it off to Claire.
So the first one, potentially less foundational and thinking about next steps, but GMB, strangely enough, does change all the time. They're always adding new bits and bobs, so it's a really good idea to understand if there's any new functionality that's been added, and then if that's available to your business. And then more importantly, how does it look to a consumer? So having a look on desktop, having a look in the Maps app, having a look on a mobile, because you might find that there are some new features that have been added that get a lot of real estate. So a lot of people, you know, they're thinking about using Google Posts, but have they thought about products, and have they thought about how services look? So just make sure that you're using everything to get that coverage and to take up as much real estate as you can in the business profile. And having great photos is quite important. So we spend a lot of our time sort of curating how we look professionally and personally, Instagram, Facebook, all of these places. And then we've got Google My Business, which is a bit of a hinterland for some businesses. So they haven't uploaded anything since, I don't know, 2013, or they haven't uploaded anything. And then look at those photos through a consumer's eyes, you know. If you're a tattoo parlor, don't have a picture of a grotty floor, you know. It needs to look clean and nice and appealing. So look at everything through the eyes of your potential consumer, get fresh photos, upload them regularly, and make sure that they reflect what people expect to see, especially now in a pandemic. You know, people want to see how you're keeping them safe. You know, the staff wearing masks. Are there big queues? Are there a lot of people? So having photos that reflect what is actually happening now in store and your location. And then Allie's obviously touched on this already, having that sort of measurement mindset. So understand what you're measuring and why you're measuring it. So one of the things that I like to do is just make sure that I am making the most of all of the opportunities to link to my business website from GMB. And in all of those cases, we're marking it up with UTM tagging so that we can measure what people actually do when they get to the website. So, you know, you might be driving people to the website, but when they're there, do they buy anything? Do they call you? Do they email? Do they sign up for a newsletter? So big fan of UTM tagging for all of your links.
Wonderful. So for your point about having great photos, do you think a business needs to hire a professional photographer and kind of outsource that? Or are there you know, principles or best practices that people can follow to create quality photos in-house?
I think there's a balance, and obviously it's very dependent on the business itself. But with you know, smartphones, we can all take very, very reasonable photos. And if you think about consumers, a lot of the time they just want to see what things look like. It doesn't have to be with amazing props and everyone's hair looks amazing. But obviously, if you're doing a shoot and you've got nice hair, it's important to upload those photos too.
Exactly. Like just like this webinar, we all came on here as we have fabulous hair, right?
I do too, even though you can't see it. I did do my hair today.
I can see your hair, Krystal.
Awesome. Okay, let's wrap up the fundamentals with Krystal's top 3.
Awesome. All right. So mine are kind of more of, you know, theoretical and philosophy around what your GMB should do when it comes to your consumers. So lately, I've been talking to a lot of businesses that have gone either partially or fully digital. So there's been this theme for years and years about your Google My Business being your online front door. And in many cases now, it's not just your online front door, it can be your primary front door. So as much as possible, keeping this in mind and trying to give those users the same feeling that when they walk past your storefront, if you're a brick and mortar, if they come into your office, if you are a professional service, as much as you can, look at your profile and try to, give off the same type of vibes, give all of the information that you would want to in a storefront window. So make sure it's a digital representation of your business. It's not just a knowledge well. I think also what's really important is giving users enough information to make a decision, especially now. I know Claire talked a lot about, the masks and the health and safeties, especially if you're expecting someone to come in person. Make sure they know exactly what to expect. Are you going to have limited product inventory? Are you going to have, a new entrance? Is there going to be limited parking? Or, there might be a line because you're limiting the amount of people that are available inside. Any information you can that's relevant to users and relevant to your category, put it in Google My Business. Don't make users dig. Make sure you have things available like chat and your phone number so people can get more information if they want. But anything that's pertinent for them to make a decision right then and there, make sure it's surfaced on your GMB profile. And then as well, I know Claire touched on this, I can't say this enough. Look at your GMB profile. Go on your mobile phone. Look at your competitors' profiles as well. Like act like a user and make sure you understand exactly what they're seeing. Kind of get outside of the GMB interface and make sure you see exactly what someone would be seeing, and that's an actual representation of what you want them to see.
Awesome. I love that you mentioned the chat option where people can get a hold of you through GMB. That was actually one of our questions that was submitted, is turning on or keeping on Messenger valuable? And I'll ask you this and then open it up to either Claire or Allie if they have thoughts on this as well. But should you consistently keep Messenger on? Is there a lot of value there?
I think absolutely, especially knowing how much things have turned to, sometimes even purely online services. I think having chat for some industries is a non-negotiable. If you're a professional service and you're trying to get leads, I know me, I hate picking up the phone and making a call, and especially like talking to someone like a customer service, like I will do anything but make a phone call. So having chat is a way to show your consumer that you are serving them. You want to give them as much opportunity as possible. So I think there's some industries where you certainly can get away with it, like maybe a retailer, not necessary. But if you are in professional services, if you are performing, services on someone's home, anything like that, I think chat is a really, really critical element to have on your GMB profile.
Absolutely. I'll totally double down on that as a millennial. Like I will order from the Starbucks app as I'm standing in the Starbucks. So
Yeah.
I would agree that that's really important for people who don't want to pick up the phone. Okay, we're going to now level up a little bit from fundamentals and start talking about posting that more engaging, interesting content about your business on GMB posts, and wrap around in the opposite direction now, Krystal first, on her top 3 things to know about GMB posts specifically. So
one of the first things I would share is Google My Business Post is probably one of the most prominent features that Google's come out with in the last 2 or 3 years around GMB in terms of visibility as well as adoption by businesses. I will also add that they are making changes so regularly to it. They're rolling out new types of posts. They're changing the display, and just recently it seems like now posts are just like hanging around forever on your GMB profile when they used to have kind of standard expiration dates and those types of things. So my first recommendation to businesses is just try out different types. Try out different types of content within the posts, different types of images, and see what works for you, because even what works for one business in the same industry may not work for you. So try it out, see which ones get the most interaction, see which one gets the most clicks, but also see which ones maybe people ask you about. Like, sometimes posts aren't driving the click or the view the same way that your ads might, but they might call you and ask about something that they saw if you're making it engaging enough. So make sure you have a way to track that and that you're trying out the different types to see what works for your business. I would also just add that, there's a lot going on your knowledge panel, and especially when you add posts into the mix, try and keep it as simple as possible. Keep that initial content to like 1 to 2 sentences. Don't have a super flashy image that has a lot of text in it. If you've got text in it, make it, large letters and, a couple words max. But try and keep it as simple as possible. Think about exactly what the message is, what you're targeting, and keep your post content skinny. And then I would also, I mentioned this before, is that Google's changing the display all the time. So what the post looked like, a couple months ago on your GMB profile on mobile might be different on desktop. So make sure you're always double checking, or you're following, the other local SEOs that are leveraging posts a lot to see what it looks like. And then the volume of posts you have is going to just change the impact as well. So just keep an eye on what they look like.
So as far as these frequent changes go, you mentioned following local SEOs. Is that primarily where you find out about these things, or what is your information source where you're keeping track of when you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh my God, what did Google do today?
Yeah, yeah, usually Twitter. Like if Claire hasn't tweeted about it because she's up, quite a few hours before I am, someone else has, or, there's a ton of local SEO forums that usually someone's linked to on Twitter. That's been, primarily my source of information if it's something I haven't noticed myself.
Yeah, and I'll say this to everyone that's on the call right now. This is a little bit of an unfair question for me to ask panelists where they find out about it because they have a more difficult job. But you guys all on this call can follow these 3 on Twitter, and you'll have a little bit of an easier time. They're usually the first to post about this kind of thing. And people will start discussing what that means or what they've seen. If it's a little bit of a slow rollout, there will be some people that are seeing it, some people that don't. You can kind of really keep track of a lot of things on Twitter.
That's a good point too. Some of these changes are tests. So just because one person is seeing the change on posts or one type of post is there, it could be just a test or it could be a slow rollout. So it might impact, just a small percentage of users or posts at a time. So I would keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. everyone will give me 1 second. Thank you for your patience. I clicked out of this presentation, and I'll bring it back up now for Claire's top 3 for GMB posts.
Well, I think Krystal's already touched on this really. Working out what works for you as a business or your organization. So it's going to be different depending on who your target market is and how they're choosing to consume your content. Just in my experience, offer posts, things where you're offering things to people, they go down very well with the types of businesses that I work with. But definitely try them all. But the fact that everything is changing in terms of how long posts are lasting. This was a little, sorry, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but this was a little conundrum I had today, is that I had a schedule for how I was adding posts based on the fact that What's New post disappeared. And then I thought to myself, I'm going to have to rethink this, because every time something changes, you need to rejig your processes, basically. But yeah, testing out what works for your business and trying the different posts. And then very much having a content strategy, but also having a publishing calendar for your posts. So it's not just let's chuck this at this and see if it sticks against the wall. Yes, do that, you know, do some testing. But once you know what's working, then you need to iterate. So get yourself a calendar, work out what type of content is working. If you know you always want to have an offer post live, then you're going to need to schedule that in. So you can use a scheduling tool. There's all sorts, but I've just been using Postmatic, which is a free sheet. And then again, measure and iterate, because not all businesses have posts. So when I say posts can work for you, they're not going to work for you if your business doesn't have them. But you can always try different variations, and I'm sure that you'll be able to come up with something that delivers some value for your business.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys to do a little bit of myth busting here on one of the things you mentioned. So let's talk about scheduling tools and GMB. This is something we talked about a lot internally when this conversation kind of came up, because you can schedule GMB through FanBooster as well for any FanBooster users that are on the call. There was a conversation about how the geotagging data in your images or media was stripped if you posted it directly through Google, but people were saying it was maybe not stripped if you posted it through a third-party scheduling tool, and that could then be some sort of advantage for ranking. Fact or fiction?
I don't think geotagging in images has any impact, especially not post images. Like I know there's this question for just standard images to your business, but I've never seen any proof that geotagging has any impact to ranking.
Cool. Okay. Myth busted.
I don't know, Allie and Claire, have you heard? I feel like the question comes up often. I'm like, are people still asking this?
I think it's the same person. I think it's a plant. I don't think it's like a drinking game, I think.
Yeah, I think the important thing to note here is also we're specifically talking about geotagging. You still need to have your alt text and that kind of stuff buttoned up for your media as well. But geotagging, wouldn't worry about it. Wouldn't think that you can't directly upload to Google, or if you're having some sort of big advantage that you need to purchase a scheduling tool, anything like that, to get that ranking advantage.
Yeah, I think it's much more important to just use posts, get them live, test them out, just use them regularly. I wouldn't make geotagging part of any concern there.
Totally.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a ranking advantage to it, like we're saying, but like there is definitely like a benefit to having a scheduler, and that's that you don't have to go in on that regular basis into the interface. Like if you can schedule out your posts once you know what works, like that's the reason to use the scheduler. I wouldn't say that like anything to do with like geotagging in any photos. I mean, that, like we said, that comes up a lot, and I can see how people wonder that about photos that they upload, but even with posts, like it just doesn't make sense that like that would have any impact on ranking, because you're consistently posting, you could just totally game the system if that was happening.
Gotcha. Yeah. So for anybody who keeps seeing those blogs come up on this call, we're doing the detective work right now. It may just be someone who wants to sell scheduling tools that keeps putting out those blogs. I will kick it off now to Allie for her top 3 on GMB posts.
Yeah, cool, thanks. So my first thing is to use the COVID-19 update posts sparingly. And the reason that I say this is because it functions it's very different from the other posts. So if you have a COVID-19 update, if you're new to posts and you're like logging into the dashboard and you see the option to add a COVID-19 update, like I think as a business owner or somebody who's managing that account, you think like, oh, this makes sense. Like that's the kind of information people want right now. And I totally agree that it is, but I think that you can absolutely share that information through a what's new post type. The COVID-19 post type, it does a few wonky things. It will completely remove your regular Google post carousel. So if you've posted a COVID-19 post and you're like, where did all my other posts go? Like that function, adding one of those posts will completely remove the carousel. I tested this recently when Google made the change where posts stay longer than 7 days, and it's still happening. I was like, maybe this is what they were doing and that was just a side effect. But no, the COVID-19 post will still bury all of your other posts, which just reduces their visibility. So if you're running a COVID-19 post, updating people on procedures, and you're still regularly posting weekly, no one's seeing those. They're like very minimal. They're getting buried. So yeah, definitely take a look into that. Obviously, it's so important for businesses to communicate how they're operating during COVID-19, but there are other ways you could do that through the other post types, as that's what we're recommending, at least for clients, just so that you don't lose the function of that fully. The next thing that I would say is that post content matters. I totally agree with Krystal. You want to keep things simple. We treat these as basically like conversion points, not so much like a regular social post where it's like an update on what's happening. We want these posts to convert. And so that content, it can be pulled into your listing when it ranks for a specific search query. So if somebody is searching for something very specific, Google can grab a little chunk of the text, they call it a post snippet, from your post and show it, which just shows the searcher that your business is a relevant business. So I grabbed some screenshots, the business that we worked with. So we had Google post that this is an offer post that's pulling the snippet from. And so the search was for car dealer, and it triggered to pull this post snippet because the word dealer and dealership. And so you can see when you click on that in the left image, the right image opens up and you'll see all of those posts. And kind of like Krystal said, we keep it simple, not too many words. It's basically a call to action. We treat it like almost like a button. And so that can happen with your Google posts if you're using content that is relevant for searchers. So target longer ideas, like long tail keywords, and you can definitely get these post snippets to show up, which I just think makes them hugely valuable. So definitely think about your content, keep it short, keep it keyword related so that you can get some of these snippets when people are searching. And so my last point, set expectations. I was thinking about Google My Business as a social media platform. And I think that it's really important to set expectations for yourself, for a business owner, whoever the stakeholders are. Don't expect the level of social engagement that you would get on other platforms like a Facebook post or something like that. That doesn't mean that your posts aren't working. If you have very low views and even lower clicks, what you need to do is absolutely start using those UTM tags, track to see when somebody clicks or views and clicks through to this post, what are they doing on your site? Are they actually converting? And look at that data rather than just views and clicks.
Yeah, that's such a great point, because people who are just kind of scrolling through their social media feed like they do every day on their phone are probably going to be much lower intent than someone who's doing Google search to actually go somewhere or make a purchase or anything like that. So Absolutely. Those conversions would definitely be more impactful. I want to touch on something that both Allie and Claire mentioned. So for people on this call that are primarily social media managers, or maybe just small business marketers who haven't dipped their toe very much into the local SEO space or the SEO space at all, you mentioned keeping it keyword related. If someone has never done keyword research or any sort of sophisticated SEO strategizing, where is the beginner, the phase one place you can go or tactic you can use to kind of get that beginner list of keywords that will be relevant to your business?
Claire, do you want to take this, or do you want me to?
So a couple of things that I can think of. One is there's some good resources out there about putting together a seed list. So working out what your search queries or what the types of search queries that your potential customers are using based on what you already know. So you don't need like a lot of expensive software. This is based on what you know, and you've got all these people inside your organization that can help you with that. So you can start by putting that seed list together yourself, and then you've got free data sets. So you've got your insights in Google My Business, and then only needs a slight another level of sort of technical savviness to get into your Google Search Console then. So then you can identify themes, what are the sets of search queries, and we all know what the products and services that we're offering. So if you have, let's say for example, you're an adventure provider and you're offering sea kayaking, mountain biking and stand-up paddleboarding, then you know that you're going to be wanting to write some posts about those things and using those regularly. So those are sort of entry-level search query research that anyone can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in addition to that, the only other thing that we use kind of on a preliminary level would be Google Ads Keyword Planner. So you have to have a Google Ads account to do that, so that might be prohibitive. But if you have somebody within your organization or you're already running Google Ads, you can definitely, go there. I mean, really, like Claire said, it's going to, what are you selling? What is the service? What are the products? And that's what you want to talk about. We often talk about this with our team that when it comes to the Google posts, for example, for dentists, implants are a really big moneymaker. And so a lot of our posts will talk about implants because that's what makes the money, doing the regular cleanings. We could talk about that till we're blue in the face, but what's actually going to, make the difference and give the business a return on investment is to talk about, the top selling services and to get more visibility on those.
Wonderful. Awesome. Yeah, nothing flashy and exciting about your biannual cleaning. So I would love for us to now start diving into the posts, the type of content that belongs in those posts. You guys have all touched on it a little bit, but I would love to know, I'll kick this one off to Krystal first. What these posts look like in GMB, mainly how they would differ from your typical Facebook posts or Twitter posts. Should you be striking some sort of balance between the 5-6 times a day things you would put out to your audience versus just very strict need to know information?
So I think one of the core differences is if you're, kind of comparing them to like a Twitter or a Facebook post, is there's a lot less visibility on the content without a click on a GMB post. So a lot of it has to do with the image if someone's looking at a post. But I love the example that Allie shared about the keywords that are pulled out. Those will then be highlighted by Google. So even though content isn't as visible, making sure that they're very important words that you're targeting in there, even if it's just a sentence. If your post is just like 1 or 2 sentences, make sure you've got your main keywords that a user would be searching. And my recommendation is usually to think about the things that are not going to be known by looking at your GMB profile. It's not part of your primary category. It's something else supplemental that can't be found in attributes and those types of things. So highlighting, a unique service or product line that people are searching for that you want them to know that you have, kind of use it as an advertising opportunity to show users.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's kick this off to Allie. Anything to add on what types of things you should post, and whether it should be more need to know or more every single thing that you would share on your audience, your audience's Twitter, Facebook, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we treat it pretty differently than I think you would treat normal, like other social media platforms. Like I said earlier, we kind of keep them conversion based. So we just want somebody to book a call or book an appointment for when it's like a service business. Otherwise, you know, there's different things you can do with products, but majority of the businesses we're working with are service businesses like lawyers, dentists, those sorts of things. And so all we need to do is get them to book that call. And so we have a pretty like regular posting schedule. We will post once a week, and that's something that we were doing when the post would expire after 7 days. It's something we decided to still keep doing right now. And generally we'll, you know, do an offer post once a month because those get great traction for a lot of our clients. Like Krystal said earlier, you kind of want to figure out what's working for different businesses. It's going to be different things, but you don't need to go and like, you know, post the sorts of things that you're posting, you know, 5-6 times a day to Facebook or Instagram. Like that's not really what this is for. You really just want to capture, basically you're just adding a nice big come here convert button to your listing. It's a very visual part. It's very, you know, it's just really visual within the business profile. So that's kind of how we tackle that.
Gotcha. Okay. Claire, what about you? Similar to how you tackle it or a little different?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think about is the fact that customers and potential customers are at a different stage in their relationship with you between your social media posts and seeing your Google My Business posts, because Google My Business, it's unlikely that people are going to keep going back to Google My Business to consume your content. You know, they're not necessarily, they might be brand aware because they might have got there that way, but they could be making a generic search basically. So they're not in a relationship with you the same way that they are if they're following you on social media. So I think that's one of the mistakes that I see is businesses just cross-posting what they have added on Facebook. And it doesn't work and it doesn't get the traction because people aren't in love with you the same way that they would be if they had liked you on Facebook.
That's a really interesting point. So people, they're usually coming across you if they're searching you, not from following you, but they can follow you. So would you guys say it's important to get followers on these things?
I think Claire probably has some experience with following. I follow a couple businesses and I don't actually know what following gets me. I'm obsessed with Target, so I follow Target, but I don't know that it actually, as a user, especially comparing to social, what that does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's pretty varied, right? So if you follow a business and you're on the Maps app on your phone, I think you kind of have to go down several levels to kind of get to basically a feed from the businesses you follow. So I'm in the same boat. I followed a few businesses, but most of them don't post that often. So like there's not value. It's not like, you know, my Instagram account where you go and you scroll every day. It's not top of mind. But I know, Claire, you've got like a business that you're working on followers with, right?
Yeah, I think like in terms of the process and Google thinking about who it's for and what it does is fundamentally slightly broken. But there are some parts of it that could work. So it takes 5 minutes to set it up. You need to do it within the GMB app. You need to UTM tag that link if you're sending them to your website, so you can find out if it converts. But yeah, it can work, especially if you imagine a business like a coffee shop or a donut place or somewhere that you go back again and again. It suits that type of business. And new followers, you could, if they make an offer, you follow them, you get the offer, it downloads automatically into your phone's camera roll, so you can just show the offer, and it also says when that there's time date stamped, so it expires. So it can work. And then if you're also tracking conversion, however you do that, for the 5 minutes that it takes you to set it up, you could be making like hundreds of dollars or pounds off of it. So I just think people don't understand what it is and who it's for, and Google hasn't done a good job of explaining that, but it can work for some businesses.
Yeah, we can't have a webinar about Google without mentioning something that is a little broken, that we don't like the way they're doing it, which you guys will notice if you start attending more Google or Gmb webinars. So what I'm hearing is that if followers are important to you, or if you're seeing a good return on some of the few followers that you do have, a top way to get more followers would be using offers or things that aren't as informational, not as like, oh, this might be interesting, but real things that incentivize people, like coupons and deals that are exclusive to that channel. Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Driving action, I think, is a key.
Yeah. And we've also like driven followers outside of maps. So we have used posting on Facebook or making a poster. So if anyone is really into maps, they'll know if it appeals to them. And you can say, do you like our content? Do you like this thing? If so, follow us on Google Maps. And people are either going to do it or they're not going to do it. But actually letting them know what's in it for them, why would they do it? Then that has driven followers, you know, for a couple of businesses that I've worked with.
Awesome. So we talked about photos already, and kind of the type of content that we're posting in these posts. I want to talk about the specific items that may be included in that content, namely things like other types of media or links and that kind of thing. I'll kick this first question back off to Claire, because Claire is the GMB link queen and the link tracking queen. She's giving me a strange look. She's being humble about it. So should you be more concentrated on driving traffic to your main website, the main link that appears on your GMB, or are you free to include any link to whatever is relevant in the post, and just as long as you're tracking it, obviously, you know, is there good link hygiene practices for how many different ways you can send people from your GMB?
Is that just from posts, were you saying?
Yeah, so if you're having posts about, you know, an offer you have or a product you have, or, you know, any sort of that thing, can you just fill those up with all sorts of different links to the relevant page on your website? Or is it best to try to concentrate on funneling people through the main link on your GMB?
I think you'd need to ask what the objective of the post was, first of all, to work out what you need to do with it. But if it's to raise awareness of a certain something that's happening and you've got content on your website that's relevant, then send them there. I'd be interested to hear what Krystal and Allie say about the call now button and the use for that, because outside, it's interesting because like I love UTM tags because you can measure everything, but then you've got you know, you've got the call functionality. They were also adding messaging to GMB posts recently by default if you had messaging turned on. So there's all these different options that Google is giving people to contact you, and you know, CTAs, but you can't necessarily measure the impact of those.
Yeah, I would just reiterate Claire's point that if you have a more relevant landing page that is not your homepage, I think that's absolutely fine to link to from a GMB post. You don't always have to drive to your homepage, especially if you don't have the answer on your homepage or you don't have the same type of content. I also think in most cases, you're either driving to your homepage or a local landing page on your standard profile. So it's actually an opportunity to, you know, kind of spread the wealth to other pages on your website. So I would definitely do that. And yeah, for call now, I really haven't seen too much traction by adding the call now button, but I also think it's a challenge with tracking. Like unless you use a special call tracking number, it's hard to say like these are the calls that were generated by the post. So it's a tough one to be able to track and say this was successful or not.
Yeah, the call now button, it just automatically imports your primary phone number that you set up in your info tab. And so really the only way to track it is to assign a call tracking phone number from a third-party site like Krystal saying, assign that to your Google My Business, put that as your primary number, take your regular number and put it as secondary, and then that tracking number will show up in your post. But in my experience, like a lot of businesses just don't have call tracking. So when it comes to reporting what we're working on, it's actually a lot better for us to use the links to the site. And I totally agree. Choose the right landing page and just make sure that whatever that landing page is, that it has like an opportunity for them to convert, like make sure there's a contact form or something, because you don't want to just send them to a great page with some information and then give them no opportunity to actually do business with you.
Wonderful. So in the conversation about you know, GMB versus Facebook, GMB versus Twitter, whatever, do you guys think that people view your Facebook post more or your GMB post more? If you were a social media manager, you had limited time and resources, hopefully this would never happen to anybody, but just for the sake of being dramatic on this webinar, and you had to choose one, which one are people seeing more often?
I think generally people are like, it kind of goes back to what Claire was saying, right? Your followers are going to see your Facebook posts, but potential new leads who are searching for your business will see your GMB posts. I think you really have to strike a balance. Like it can't be one or the other. If you're a social media manager, you can't just, you know, ditch Facebook and choose GMB because you might get some conversions. I think whatever your Facebook, I'm totally not in social media, whatever your Facebook regular scheduling recommendations, like throw in if the scheduler allows you to post to GMB, it doesn't take that much time a month to just throw one post a week, even if you can do that. If you can't do that, you know, set up an offer post. Those ones you can choose the duration of it, so you can have an offer post that lasts for a month or several months. We've got a business that will basically, like, they consistently are running, you know, 15% off for self-storage units, and so they have the Christmas sale, and then they have the Valentine's Day sale, and then the St. Patrick's Day sale. And so you could definitely, you know, consistently be posting offers if you don't have time to go and schedule it for weekly posts.
Yeah, I would definitely say if there are any types of posts from, you know, a social media content calendar perspective that you are trying to drive action on, and they're not just informational or, you know, maybe think about your promotional ones, consider those as a GMB one. It's not a one-to-one. It's not, you can't use GMB exactly as you would use it, you know, a Facebook social media post. Anything you're trying to drive action on or a promotional offer, that's where you want to test out GMB as a channel there.
Gotcha. Okay, so besides, you know, your recycled content that you're just porting over from Facebook or Twitter that we discussed, that's not really a good way to do it. It should be something specific for people who are doing Google searches for your business. Besides that big no-no, is there anything that people should never include in Google My Business posts? And if yes, bonus points if you have a horror story about something a client did or something you did back in the day, or anything that should never appear on someone's GMB.
So I don't have a horror story. I just have basically on the GMB forum, lots of people complaining about why their post got rejected. And, you know, there's a lot of words that, you know, the nanny bot, the Google nanny bot catches. So if you are ever kind of in the boat in terms of getting rejected, you just go through the words in your GMB post and say, like, which one could be considered, you know, not within guidelines. There's certainly a lot of posts relevant and then irrelevant because maybe they make sense in one country and not the other, that would cause your post to be rejected.
Yeah, I think we could talk till we're blue in the face also about reasons that your GMB would be suspended, not keyword stuffing, your business name, all of those types of things. I would recommend everyone on the call, if you're really just starting out and creating a sophisticated GMB presence, definitely be up to date on all that sort of thing, because it's tempting, but don't do it. Up on the map, right, is the hashtag on Twitter. Okay, do we have anything else you guys have seen should definitely not go in a Google My Business post?
Are they flagging things for photos? I think I've seen something before where if there's like a certain amount of like skin ratio in the photo, that caused somebody's post to be rejected. So like instances where that could come up, it's like, you know, plastic surgeon or like place that's selling bikinis. If Google's nanny bot, as Krystal calls it, they don't like it, that can cause it to be rejected. But honestly, I think it's mostly the words. And like, to give an example of some of these words, for example, like stripping isn't allowed as one of the words, but you might be a hardware store that's selling weather stripping, which you use to, you know, like insulate your home. And so then as a hardware store, you're looking at your post like, what's wrong with this? There's nothing, I haven't done anything wrong. And it's just like a misunderstanding of that word. I don't think I have a horror story about this happening, but I did have a colorectal surgeon, and we had some posts get rejected, and we had to, you know, use some less graphic terminology, which is just like it's in their business name. So that's the only instance where I've had like several posts get rejected, and we had to change things up.
Google is no fun with all those things, but it wouldn't let people post. I apologize for my dog barking, guys. I want to, in our last 9 minutes or so here, we have a lot of good questions, and these definitely also skew just towards general ranking best practices for local search. So we would be a fool not to take advantage of having these wonderful women on here to not back up to some more of these SEO focused questions. So I'm going to run through a couple of them. So the first one is about Q&As. We talked about, you know, always answering your reviews, whether they're positive or negative. We have a question here about Q&As, and do they provide value in ranking? No. Everyone is going to try to pick somebody to kick it off to. Everyone's shaking their head now.
Okay. I would say Q&As, they don't provide value in ranking, but it is absolutely a reputation management area. Just like how anybody can write a review of business, anybody can write a question, anybody can answer it. A local example that I saw, somebody asked a question on a Walmart, and you know, they're asking if something was sold there, and then somebody or another random user answers and says, no, but go to this store. So if you're not monitoring that, you know, even other Google users could be sending people to other places. So it's huge for reputation, huge for, you know, maintaining like your reputation, your client base, but it's not a ranking factor.
Yeah, definitely one of those fundamental things where if you only try to do what you think is going to rank and you're not focused on actually having good content and a good presence, it's going to hurt you in the long run, which is, I think, basically what you can boil SEO down to in general. So the answer is yes, still do that. No, you may not see ranking differences as you go through and answer those questions. We have a really good question that I feel like comes up a lot for either online-based businesses or businesses that don't have a brick and mortar location that people can, you know, show up to wanting to shop around and buy a product. So the question is specifically about SaaS products. I think this can be widened a little bit and even sometimes include service-based ones. You know, you're not going to show up to your plumber's place, he's going to show up to your place. So what can businesses do if they have an online-based product? Should they still have a GMB, or is that not allowed because they don't have an address that they can send people to?
So I'll start this one off, but interested to hear some other thoughts. Google My Business is not for everyone. It's not for every business. So I know it's highly visible, but I think it's important to note that. And the core difference has been GMB historically has kind of stayed away from those pure e-commerce business types. We are starting to see small trends towards Google integrating it more, adding online shopping links and those types of things. But as of right now, like the guidelines state, you must make in-person contact, whether someone is coming to you or you are going to them. The one small caveat, and this is due to the pandemic, is if you historically made in-person contact but now maybe you're a lawyer and you're only doing virtual consultations. Even if you're like, I don't know if I'll ever go back to in-person, Google has rolled out a number of online service attributes that you can enable, and you can still keep your profile. But that's not for, net new businesses starting fully virtual services. Those would not qualify. Plenty of them exist on maps. That's why Google's got, redressal forms to report them, but the guidelines state you have to make in-person contact, whether, again, that's someone coming to you or you going to them.
Gotcha. Okay. So SaaS-based companies asking about this, it may just not be for you, and you need to find the right avenues for your business. Something Krystal just touched on, though, that I would recommend everyone keeps track of, for those e-commerce businesses, they are starting to show up in the same way that searches would show up for people with local intent. So someone is searching shoes, some people are starting to see search results where it will show them places they can buy shoes or order shoes, and that kind of thing. So just like they keep saying, things keep rolling out differently. Different people are showing different things in different areas. Just keep track of what's coming up in your area, in your industry. So let me move on. I'm going to scroll through these questions just a little bit. What are the top 3 factors to increase page ranking? What a Pandora's box. Again, I keep saying that, but that's kind of how it is for SEO. Okay, if you had to just, we could have conversations for days about this. If you had to just rattle some off, top 3.
Keyword stuff your name.
Yeah, for Google My Business.
Okay, I'll pick somebody. Allie, why don't you go first? Everyone's jumping in at once.
So this is for how to make your Google My Business listing rank.
They said page. Let's do Google My Business for the sake of keeping this a little bit narrowed down for this topic today.
Yeah, there's a few things that I would say are they're definitely ranking factors, whereas a lot of the things we work on in GMB are conversion factors. Krystal popped up for a second there to make the joke, keyword stuff for business name. The content in the business name absolutely has huge ranking benefits. So we don't advise that people keyword stuff their business name, because you have to use your real business name. You're doing business as name, registered with Secretary of State or whatever type of business licensing company you have in your country or your region. But definitely that plays a role. If you're a plumbing company and plumbing is in your name, then you do have a better chance of ranking. Things that you can actually control, your primary category, like I mentioned earlier, make sure that you've got the right category. You can also set up secondary categories. So you want to make sure you've got the right ones. And if you're like a seasonal business, make sure you've got the right one for the right season. If you're HVAC, you can have your heating in the winter, cooling in the summer, and try to go with the flow with searchers. So category is huge. I also think that reviews are huge. Make sure, like I said, you're getting those reviews. It's your reviews, how often you're getting them, your review count compared to your competitors, your rating. So how high of a score do you have? I also saw in some of the questions earlier, somebody asked for advice on how to rank for best queries. And I think when it comes to the local pack, you have to have a 4.5 star rating or higher to show up when best is in the search queries. So that's just, I guess, related to that.
Wonderful. Okay, so don't keyword stuff, but if you haven't started your business yet and you're about to name it, think about naming it a keyword. But don't name your business best whatever, because it won't work unless you have a 4.5 rating. Is how I'm summing that all up for everybody and for our live tweeting. Okay, anybody else want to jump in to finish off our last minute here with a couple of ranking factors?
I'd probably go and look at the Whitespark local ranking factors report, and then see what, because it's just based on what people that work in local marketing with a range of businesses think might be important and don't think is important. So I think go and give that a read. That would be a really good start.
Yeah, and I would just add, like, reviews have been growing astronomically, everything to do with them. So if you do not have a review strategy, you are, missing out a really large portion of what's impactful to your business and visibility.
Wonderful. Okay, we are at time, so I just want to thank these 3 expert women for joining us today, and you're backing up a little bit for us to really lay some good Google My Business foundational knowledge, and hopefully get everyone started on ranking, first of all, but also, pushing those conversions, engaging those people through their posts, using those social media skills on posts a little bit. So once again, this will be available in the replay video on YouTube and the recap blog on the Traject blog that you'll be emailed. Thank you guys all so much for attending today. Thank you to Claire, Allie, and Krystal so much for spending this time with me to talk about this with everybody. And we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.